to be digging in an artist talk and workshop dedicated to Jorgenson. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the workshop series and the studio, and then history. So, well known, but I'm Megan Jorgenson, and this is Prairie Studio, which is a community center studio run by Katie and myself. We operated out of our home studio north of Kimball, starting in 2018 and expanded into this location in the fall of 2023. We are both practicing studio artists, and we offer 5 and 10 week community pottery classes, short come try it classes. We also teach field trips and private groups, and we offer a range of opportunities for emerging and established ceramic artists, including residencies, apprenticeships, internships, and retreats. This is the first workshop in our Ceramic Arts Community Workshop series, which will be an ongoing monthly series for the next 10 months or longer, hopefully. We'll feature a different artist each month, mostly regional ceramic artists. Some workshops will be intended as an introduction to clay for beginners or for families, and some for mixed levels. And we're offering this workshop series as a way to provide artists with opportunities to share their work and for the community to learn more about ceramics. We're working on the fall schedule, so stay tuned for that. I also want to give a few acknowledgments. This workshop series is made possible by the voters of Minnesota through a grant from the Central Minnesota Arts Board, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund. Thank you to MAB and the voters of Minnesota. We are really grateful to have the grant, to have this opportunity to share this workshop series with you. We also want to acknowledge our fiscal sponsors, Springboard for the Arts. Their sponsorship of our educational and artist support programming makes it possible for us to receive grants like this grant. It also means we can receive tax-deductible donations. We have some literature on that if you're interested. We can share that with you. And now I'd like to introduce our featured artist, J.D. Jorgenson. He's going to be giving his talk first, and then followed by demonstration on the wheel. He's going to tell you quite a bit about himself, so I won't tell you all right now, but he's been working in clay for over 30 years, and a very accomplished potter and educator. He's been married to me for 5 years plus 1 day, and has been living in Minnesota most of the time that he's been a practicing artist. And I'll let him tell you the rest about himself. So, that's it for me. Maybe an artist number. Do you want lights off?
Thank you, Megan. Thanks for everybody who has come to the workshop series. We really appreciate your presence and taking the time out of your busy schedules to come down to Kimball and join us today. Just want to reiterate, thank you again, like Megan said, to my wife for all of her support and all of her energy she puts into everything that we do personally and professionally. Thanks to our parents for our support, Micah and Ophelia, and thanks to also our studio assistants, Cortland and Lauren, for helping us make the studio into what it is today with a very, very short turnaround time from when we set foot in last fall. So thanks again to the Central Minnesota Arts Board for having this opportunity for us in this grant in our workshop series, and also to Springboard for the Arts and our local communities too. I just wanted to start out this afternoon with an artist talk or a slide talk, which is all digital now. So we're going to show some images of a project that I did quite a few years ago, and trying to figure out what to talk about for this workshop has been a bit of a difficult thing to wrap my brain around. And So bear with me on this information. It turns out this time, or 20 years ago, I had just finished my apprenticeship at St. John's University as an apprentice. And what I'm going to be sharing with you is a project that I did directly after that time to try to figure out what the next steps were as a maker, as an artist, as a potter, as just a person, really. So I'll start some images about that soon. And I grew up in North Dakota, kind of backtracking a little bit. My family is ranchers, cowboys on my dad's side, and farmers on my mom's side. And I grew up I'm a flatlander originally, big sky out there in Prairie. And wasn't quite sure what to do after high school. I went to college at NDSU and started some school there. But in high school, I took a lot of art courses, and I was drawn towards that and other things. But there was an old wheel in the corner of the art room where I asked my teacher, Mrs. H, if I could use it. No one was really utilizing it, so I started tinkering with it on my own without much direction, and found that I really enjoyed that. So when I decided to go to college in Fargo, I still, it's taken me, I'm 48 years old now, and it's taken me this long to still trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life. But then I did not know, and I knew at NDSU when I was there, I had to try a lot of different things, and anthropology and archaeology, and my first ceramics course there, which really drew me in. I really love the tactile sense of clay and making things out of something, this amorphous material, and then it's something else. And you do that with your hands and all these different steps. It's really complicated, and I was really drawn in, captivated. And I went kind of through some studies there, ended up transferring to the University of Iowa, where I finished my degree in my BA in liberal arts, but my focus was in ceramics and almost a minor in Japanese language, which I don't use that much now, but clay is something that stuck with me this whole time, and I feel very thankful for that. You never know where an interaction with a teacher or a person lends to a path that maybe you were unaware of and helped you stay on that path. And I've had these interactions with teachers and friends and other people along the way that have kept me on the path of clay. And as I came back from Iowa to the cities, worked in after my degree, trying to figure out what to do, trying to start a studio, art education, gallery work, things like that. It was all very not clear. But when I came to the cities, I worked at a production pottery for a while, worked at UPS for a while. I loved rowing. I did that in college. And after college, that kind of went away finally, but clay stayed constant. I applied for a visiting artist grant to the St. John's Pottery when I was in the cities, which brought me up to this area, to Collegeville. I was awarded that. I feel very thankful for that opportunity, and brought me to that space where I subsequently apprenticed after my artist time there for a year and a half. And what I didn't know then is it allowed me time to focus on making things. College was really important for learning and having some directed guidance with all that. But after that, my time apprenticing really try to hone my skills with throwing and other aspects of using local materials and digging clay, which is something this project really really meant a lot to encompass those things. Because there was awareness in college about digging clay and using tools and tradition of Japanese and Asian aesthetics, Korean and China and different places all over the world, but actually putting some of those things to work was, I feel very thankful for. So after my year and a half apprenticeship, a rite of passage that my mentor, Richard Bresnahan, did in Japan when he studied there for 4 years was he built a kiln, made bricks and built a kiln at the Nakazato family's studio as a rite of passage. And another apprentice friend and I did something similar where we thought, well, this might be a good opportunity to bridge the gap from finishing our apprenticeship to taking some steps into our own spaces. And so we did that. Mike and I started the BFH fire brick making project. We had more time than we had money to buy fire bricks. So we ended up kind of going all in. Friend James Dean let us come out to his property and utilize a bare spot where we built and made bricks. Now, working at the St. John's Pottery, Richard had some large amount of clay brought over from the St. Cloud Quarry back in the day, Meridian aggregates, and put on campus, as well as clay that he used and we processed and used in the studio every day from near Avon, Collegeville area. So those two clay bodies were on campus, and with his permission, we got some of this clay originally to screen and to use for our fire bricks. So that's what we did. We dug it. It was close at that time. We made some screens. We screened that material, and we filled it into buckets. And then we brought this clay out to Diener's place, where we stockpiled all this material. Very labor intensive. So we had no idea how to make bricks, but doing quite a bit of research before social media at that time. There's a lot of books, a lot of talking to people, a lot of library work actually, not digital form. And we came across like brick making molds, talked to Richard about what he did, like other people across the world did for making bricks, facing bricks and so forth. And we ended up making our own tools and figuring out, well, do we make one brick at a time? Do we make a bunch of bricks at a time? So there's a lot of trial and error that came with this, a lot of failure in this project. We made our own mallets because we ended up pounding the clay into our molds that we set on. And that's a picture of it right there. It's a gang mold of 48 bricks that we came to. Originally, we made a 1 brick mold, and we decided to make bricks that were English style, 3 by 4.5 by 9s, 3 inches thick by 4.5 inches by 9 inches. And because we were like, how are we going to fire these? And one way we thought of was, well, we'll stack them into a scove kiln. And a scove kiln was a traditional, like, I think English style way of stacking bricks into a trapezoid that had fireboxes around the base of it, and it was fired with wood or coal or something. And it was a short chimney is what it was. So the inside bricks got fired really hot, and they were used for building, and the bricks that didn't get fired, you just restacked it into that shape again, but they were on the inside. So as we were trying to figure out like how to dry these bricks so they didn't change shape or shrink, and how to dry them out in that space, because there wasn't any power there. We had very rudimentary. A little bit of water we got from Diener's house, but we didn't have electricity or things like that. But once we decided not to do a single brick mold, it was then a 3 brick mold, and then it was a 6 brick mold. And then we came to that 48 brick gang mold. And what we did was, instead of, it saved us time because we were, doing other things, but all the bricks, they dried in place, and we ended up deciding like, okay, how are we going to fire these? How is it supposed to work? And we ended up letting the bricks dry in place, and as they dried, we stacked them into essentially a tube kiln. So we used a mixer we had from a friend, like a mud mixer, cement mixer. Then we wheelbarrowed it over to the molds. We had 2 molds and 2 brick cutters. Oiled the molds with waste oil and kerosene as a release. Pounded them in place, screeded off the top, and then made our own cutters that matched the grooves in our molds to cut the bricks, to cut them in place and leave them be. We made stamps. We stamped every single brick with that mallet picture. That was like that first logo type hammer. So we did that on every single brick on the side and really kind of got into it. But there was something really, I feel very thankful for the time to work through all these things, because it was a very informative time for me working to try to figure out where to go next. And using the clay that was close to us, that initial batch from Richard was really important, and Diener allowing us to do those things too. What you see here, we figured out that we had just over 1,000 bricks that we can make in that footprint. So once we figured that out, and it took quite a while because we did this for about a year and a half, then we knew that we could make 1,000 bricks in about a weekend, let them dry in place, and covered with plastic. So as they dried, then we ended up stacking them into this kiln that we're going to fire. So we were like, oh man, everything's getting wet. So how do we deal with that? We had some handmade bricks from a friend that he built. He made his own handmade bricks. He was a foundry artist, a metal artist, and lived up near Holdingford, Little Falls area. So we used his bricks for the floor of this initial kiln design. We decided not to make a stove kiln, but actually stack the bricks into a tunnel kiln or a coffin kiln, all raw bricks, and fire it raw. We didn't want to have a huge impact on this space. It wasn't our property. We wanted to be respectful of this time and these materials and the property we were on. So we were like, well, we can't dig buttressing in and support this kiln. So what do we do for an arch? How do we design an arch that isn't going to push the walls out and collapse it? So this is an image of essentially the wall section of the first part, and then figuring out the step up and how to stack the bricks, do masonry work without any mortar because they're all dry stacked, and also how those bricks and brickwork works, from housing or facing bricks to structural kiln building approaches. And this is about as like on the fly as you can get. There's gaps in the bricks. It's just a a stretcher row and then a soldier row every fifth course or so, a row lock to help those straight walls be stable, because we didn't know how to get around not having a catenary arch or a self-supporting arch in this process. What we ended up doing was we decided on a flat top arch after trying some arch forms that didn't pan out with a shallow arch pitch. But what you see here is everything is recycled that we've been using here, except for the wheelbarrow and except for the mixer, the plywood on hand for the pallets, the metal, the tools. We bought the metal for the blades, but the block for the footing here, the footer wall, was all block that we salvaged from a garage in St. Cloud where someone ran into it with a truck. So we backfilled it with the soil on site to give us that step up on the kiln. And it kept getting bigger. So originally it was just going to be a small chimney, and it ended up being 23 feet long. And about 3 feet tall inside, approximately 3 to 4 feet. Because then we started thinking, like, okay, we're making bricks and we want to fire these bricks for our kilns down the road, but we're also like, wow, we should actually make some pots at some point here and try to get some pots in this kiln and see how they look too. Sorry. So there, that first section that you see, that really shallow arch form, we tried casting the same clay that we made bricks from on that arch form to make a very shallow coffin kiln, but that didn't pan out. That collapsed, so we had to come back and change our thinking about still how are we going to put a lid on this kiln and fire these bricks, because that was the end goal, really, is to have functional bricks at the end. Tomba style kiln exit. There wasn't a chimney at that point. We're like, well, we'll just, we thought, well, we'll just make a checkerboard chimney exit from the chamber, and it should be fine. Look, and then we were like, well, we are on someone's property. This isn't our own property. We don't want to be respectful of setting the trees on fire. So we adapted that, changed that. Everything was getting wet, like I said. So we built a kiln shed over it with reclaimed playground material, 4x6s, and timbers from the dumpster at St. John's at the time, and window frames from the prep school at St. John's. These windows are like 10 feet across. I've got like 20 of these or 10 of these, I forget, that we use for this form, the kiln shed. We ended up changing the flue exit, building we had some fire bricks that we salvaged already that we use for the flue tunnel right here, and the chimney base have a safer exit for that heat and flame. What you're looking at there is a flat top coffin type lid on the flue exit, but those are completely green clay slabs. We made, I forget how many, I think 20 or 30 of them. They were 3.5 inches or 3 inches thick by, 4.5 inches thick by like 2 by 3 feet in size, these slabs. And we dried them on edge out there on those platforms because we made a flat top lid for the kiln out of those slabs that we suspended with nichrome wire and buttons. And that's what this next picture is going to show you, the first firing of that. So there we're keeping the kiln dry. We had some kind of steps along the kiln, and then across the top, there was some salvaged metal that we used to suspend these slabs as a roof to support by nichrome wire. In our research, we failed to not realize that the nichrome wire, every time you bend it, I believe, every time you bend or make a corner, around these bars, it was like 3 or 4 bends. It reduces the strength of that material by a significant amount. And even though those slabs were supported on each side of the wall by about 1 inch, there was clear span that it wasn't supported very much. And during this first firing, the nichrome wire failed and then dropped the slabs in over the firebox, so we shut it down. But what you're looking at here is KOL for helping fire the outside of the bricks. And preheating that, there was water pouring out of the bricks for, I forget how long. Yeah, just running out of the cable. Yeah, because it was all green, all raw bricks. Everything was super wet. So we did the best we could for our first firing, never doing this before. Firing with slab wood and edging. Like I said, about 1500 degrees, it kind of shut us down, and we had to like let it cool and start over. Since those slabs, you can see the ones behind the bars, but to try to get around that support section, we put these steel bars over the firebox and put the slabs back and tried again. That's the back of the kiln of that firing. That's where a lot of bricks were. All that black is the soot from just drying everything out. Didn't get very hot back there, but it is beautiful patterns on the bricks. I wish I would have taken some photos of those then. Pots in there. So you can see the inside face after that is bisky, but only about 1/2 inch of those bricks were bisque fired. This clay is such a high temperature refractory material that 2/3 of those bricks, or well, way more than that, were raw on the outside still. And we realized, okay, well, now we got to do something about firing these bricks completely, and still making some pots to test out all that stuff too. That's after that firing, that second firing. Definitely got hotter inside. Definitely had like nines moving or bisquing temperature. A couple old pots. We use that brick clay for lots of things. I've used it plenty over the years for pizza ovens and insulation. Meg and I, on our kilns now, we have this clay as our insulation coat on our wood kilns. And we used it in this situation for post wadding and post like kiln wash. At a low temperature, it was okay, but high temperature, it's not a good approach over the years, working with that clay. There are 2 different types of kaolin clay that I had originally gotten from, that we used from St. John's and also from Martin Marietta now, but it was Meridian then. There's a green kaolin that has a lot of sodium salts in it from the basalt dikes in the quarry, the decomposed granite that created this overburden for millions of years. So we still use that clay now at our home studio. And there's also a white kaolin that's more high temperature that we made most of the bricks out of that were our first batch. And it's also more of a calcium-based clay, kaolin. While we were making bricks, we decided to try out firing the kiln. It ended up being a convertible kiln, so we stacked the back step only, built a wall inside with 2 like makeshift fireboxes, and fired up a few pots to test out some things. KOL and some drums for a chimney, and it's about as high tech as you can get. Yeah. So definitely, I love that low tech stuff, middle tech, that we call that, the old, Brady. We didn't have, again, really had a good solution to figure out how to put a flat top kiln, like a roof on this. this kiln. So we built a wall in the center right by the firebox to span some clay kiln shelves that we made that were 16 by 16s, and just kind of corbel in the roof and then put kale wool over it. That's how we fired the first few times like that. That's my son Micah when he was little, helping out. Wood ash glaze on porcelain from one of those first 3 firings. So the 4th firing, we made some alterations in this learning process of our how to make bricks and how to fire bricks. We made the chimney differently. We made some more work. Some coil jars out of clay and porcelain and St. John's clay. Again, we fired it with the slabs that were still intact, those big thick slabs on top. There's that center wall again. That's Diener. Some results from that, or a result. We spoke to a refractory company and asked them, wrote up a proposal for some support. And Lee was very open to that and about using potentially their refractories for a coffin kiln or a flat top kiln design for our brickmaking project. And we feel very thankful that she had supported us in that process, as well as talked to Meridian to get a larger amount of this clay, because essentially we were a year or so out of our apprenticeship, or my apprenticeship, and we wanted to kind of develop some of those relationships on our own. So we contacted the quarry and asked about clay and if they would have some support in our project, and they said yes as well. So what you're looking at in this picture is a spot in the quarry now where it's a driving, it's a space, it's a haul road now. That is no longer there. That was back in, 2004 or so. And that haul line right there is, that black line is the basalt seam, and that's all overburden of this kaolin clay material from the decomposed bed of granite. So that's what I've gotten over the years, and that's how long I've been using it since then in different ways. We were able to have a truck come and drop off a load, so it was right on site, so we didn't have to use buckets off-site and transport it, and it increased our efficiency. It was super helpful with labor because it was super labor intensive already. We took one of our extra window screens, we put some hardware screen and screened all that material down. Because our original batch of bricks, we actually mixed with fire clay that we bought, and we made a paper clay. Actually, we mixed all the bags of that the clay was into our bricks, so it was like a paper clay brick mix of high alumina fire clay and this brick clay that we mixed together at like 70-30 blend. But these bricks were full on straight clay from that quarry. Diener is an architect. He's been that his livelihood over the years, lots of design type things. So he had a lot of fun developing like site plans and scale of the brick kiln, and that's his pickup to scale. That's a grand piano to scale, or like how it looks amongst the brickyard. That's, I guess he put me in there next to the kiln. So we had a lot of fun out there with him back and forth and keeping tabs on us and really giving us some insight on all these things, programming and looking and seeing things differently from a perspective that maybe we haven't had experience-wise and building-wise. So what you're looking at is changes to the kiln. He drew up what the kiln was and then how we were going to change it. So we made it taller We added side stokes into the brick wall, actually. And then with the help of our refractories, we figured out the assembly of how the module system fit on the roof and on the walls, and how many bricks we could fit inside and fire in one shot. So it shows nitride bonded silicon carbide bars as a support, and 18-inch by 36-inch nitride bonded silicon carbide kiln shelves that were, I think, 5/8 of an inch or 1/2 an inch thick for the roof. And that's with the help of this project and the people that helped sponsor us, that's how we kind of came to our roof kiln. Our kiln.
Is that like refractory manufacturer?
It was Alpha Materials. I don't know if Lee's still around and doing that, but she and her family ran a refractories industrial manufacturing business in Malaysia, and that's where they came from. And Lee's great. I feel very thankful that I've met her and have her support since then with that project specifically. So here's the brickyard after we figured out how many bricks and what we could put. So we got them all drying, changing some of the kiln. Since the clay bricks were so refractory, we ended up swapping the walls. We unstacked and then restacked the walls so the inside was out on both sides, so we could get most of the bricks fired properly. We dug down, we built a firebox with a grate, with rubble brick, those slabs that cracked and didn't work out. That was the floor. Again, there's no concrete under this. It was all on grade in the ground, just a little bit. And then for this project, you can see the walls where we stacked the bricks that were raw on top of the fire bricks. And then we stacked the whole inside of the kiln as how Facing Brick Company in North Dakota, Hebron Brick, how they stack bricks on their tunnel kilns to fire them for houses. So we did that the similar way. There's the roof. So those previous pictures were of the whole load of bricks, but this last firing, like I said, the sixth firing, we decided just to fill the whole kiln with work. And that's what we did. We used some of the carbide bars that we used for the roof as spanning the inside so we could have work right amongst the fire and the charcoal, like that 4 foot or 3.5 foot long slab tray is. Lots of information to unpack on this deal.
How long are those firings?
You know, the first firing that we did, I think we fired. I want to say it was close to 5 days of just like propane, just to dry, like preheating with the torch and wood. We barely got. It didn't get very hot. Maybe it was 1,800 degrees up front in the firebox, but that one was the longest, and the other ones were 3 to 4 days long, probably, I guess. That's coil piece that had the brick clay slip on and ash glaze from the firing. These are all really old photos. Lucky, bad old photos. So we came to our end of the journey on the brickyard of that project, and what we did was Mike and I took it all down. It's like I did some climbing when I was younger, and just being out and about and trying to leave no trace, trying to leave things like they were and put it back how it was. And being able to be on this property, we definitely had an impact on the space, and we didn't want to leave it like that. So we took it all down. We, Mike and I, we split the bricks, the materials, the block, all those things we moved, and to use in our own studios. Things that we could recycle and do, we did. We took them away, and a lot of those bricks were in my old kilns, and a lot of the bricks have been used in our kilns now, or at least for insulation and such. They were not hot face bricks, but my first kilns I built with them, they were wedges in the arch and such, full on skew backs and all that. So Matt, who I apprenticed with at St. John's, he came back and we were prospecting for some clay. And this is during the same time that brick project was going on. And that's some clay that while we were making bricks, we were doing a little bit of prospecting and had some okay to go into a gravel pit to look around. And this is what we found just from scraping the surface.
Look at it, it's beautiful.
That's the St. Joe clay. This is these pictures are here because it's showing not only the brick clay that I've been using for a long time since the brick project from the quarry, but also other places where I've had a connection to in St. Joe, the black clay that I've used over the years as clay buddy and slip. And this is a picture of my parents' land out in Dickinson area, North Dakota. And that is clay bluffs along the Spring Creek that I go back and dig clay as often as we can. Lately, hasn't been as often, but soon. There's the clay knobs. When I was a kid, I plink cans with a .22 rifle with my dad, right? And all I knew of these and what these clay knobs were that experience. The pasture land is beautiful. It was hayed. We have sharp-tailed grouse dancing grounds out on my parents' property, and but this is what I knew then until I realized the importance of what the clay looked like to be used and to use in the wood kilns. That's my dad and my daughter Ophelia. A big thing that I learned from my apprenticeship and something I've held to in my making now, this slide presentation is unaltered since I first gave it, but it's really important to know that I really have tried to make the clay that I've been using over the years, the wild clay, the clay from different parts of or different places I have a connection to that have a really positive energy, have those properties. They're very different from one another, but it's something that you cannot find and we cannot find anywhere else in the world. They're specific to the geological formation. I feel very thankful to have been able to use some of them and continue to use some of them now. and working at St. John's and learning to wood fire there, but also learning to use and make our own tools, and using these clays is something that's very important to me. So that is the extent of my slide talk about this project that I've done so many years ago that has such an impact on me. Thanks.
That was great.
You guys have any questions about
Yeah,
this?
that black strip of clay that you're talking about, you mentioned that it's overburned and overburned from the basalt, or like how does that interaction really happen?
Well, that's, I'm not a geologist, but the quarry, the bedrock there had broken down over millions of years to create the granite, minerals in the granite broken down into their base components. And so they're like, you could pick up something that looked like a piece of granite and you could just crumble it in your hand. So there was feldspar, there's silica, there's kaolin, different types of kaolin, there's different trace minerals in all that clay, that overburden. So what the quarry does, and it's something that's fascinating that you should go on the tour if you can, because every other year, they have to take off that overburden, that decomposed material that they can't crush down into material for railroad beds or concrete or things like that, that it needs to be granite, actual granite, and not the weather granite. The weather granite is something they can't use. And at that point, it's such a scale at a mine or a quarry that, I've used it for any number of things over the years. Potting clay I've made out of that, throwing clay to slips, but the scale that they can't use those things. There's not a market for the quarry to actually utilize that in a way for them to make. So they put it on site. They make berms and safe, berm, a pile of material along a roadway so things are safe for haul trucks, or they stockpile it on site, things like that, to get to the rock bed.
Overburden is like a mining term.
It's a mining term, yeah.
It's the stuff that you get rid of to
Yeah. Because if anybody's used screens, or even pushing clay through a screen after you're done making it, clogs up the screen.
Yeah.
Well, there's a washing plant that's part of the quarry that if that material, the overburden, that clay that I've been using over the years, goes through the wash plant and into the screens, well, it'll blank out all the screens. These are not small screens, like a bucket size. These are multi-million-dollar rubber screens that get filled up with clay, and then they don't screen out the right size rocks, because that's what they're doing. They're crushing the big rocks, into making small rocks, all the way down to sand, granite sand. And that sort of material isn't something that they can use.
But you're saying that you can use the overburden that you were showing?
Well, I have been for over the years.
Which quarry is it? You mentioned Twins.
It was the quarry in St. Cloud.
The Martin area.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, and that go ahead.
Sorry. Is any of that radioactive? A lot of granite tends to have uranium in it that's going through a decay chain.
Yeah, not this, from the chemical analysis that they had and that I had seen. Yeah. Yeah. Uh,
What is BFH stand
uh-huh.
what?
We went back. We altered back and forth between big effing hammer and barefoot. Barefoot hammer brick making project.
I think it was the first one.
Yeah,
I was trying to figure it out.
you know. So, that being said, too, I haven't been prospecting. Like, there's a lot of people I think out there now prospecting for wild clay and local materials and things like that. Every step along the way, we had permission to go do the things that we were doing. Please understand that I didn't go out on these different places and businesses and mines on my own without asking permission and having it be okay. Or property owners, that's not how things work. Liability-wise these days and all that. So over the years, I've been working with these materials and not prospecting for more, but I've been using clay from Grand Marais and the quarry where I used to work and back home and Kimball and St. Joe and Iowa and Madeline Island. So these places have really strong energy to me. And so I try to incorporate them into my work, my personal work, in ways that reflect those materials, that don't change those materials because I can, and have them respond to the firing process initially and fully in the wood burning kiln, because that is where they look like they respond well. But I've tried really hard to minimally process these things. We use them as slips for decorating and dipping, but not, I used to not screen the clay at all. Like there would be rocks in there, which was fine, but then I ended up making a slip casting clip out of those materials. So I had to. It brought me to the point of having to change that characteristic to take the rocks out so that step would be easier and the failure rate would be less.
That makes sense because I grew up as a kid in New Jersey. We moved, when I was 12. And I remember there were creeks that would go through the woods at my house. And there's supposed to be a white clay that's in that area of South Jersey. And I'm like really keen to get back there one of these days, just to get like a pail of that and make a slip out of it. You know? And that's my connection with that. And when you're a kid, you don't really know how clay is going to impact you in the future. So I'm like, I was just catching frogs and stuff. But I do remember seeing some of that kind of like a pale gray or a white clay. So that's like the goal of mine right now is to eventually get back there and get some more hats.
Well,
and that from my childhood,
Yeah, and that's a big reason why I feel very thankful about using the clays that I have, because we don't get to see our parents very often. We don't get to go home as much as we used to, and being able to go out and dig some clay, hopefully, and also have connection to back home and seeing our parents. I feel thankful to be able to do that, and that's even more infrequent these days. But it's going to be turning and being more frequent again. So.
Yeah, that's a beautiful connection you made. The story of your childhood, and how clay you didn't realize what the clay meant until you did.
Well, yeah. Thank you. Should we make a comment on, or should I turn off the volume here and then get reset?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or if you want to stop it and start.
I don't know if I can do that.
Okay, let's take a pause.
Yeah, that used to.
All right.
Starting the volume, but right there.
Yeah, like so fairy grow type stuff. Very grow. The last couple weeks I've been working on height and form and just getting pots done within 10 to 15 minutes, just moving on, moving on, moving on. It's so helpful. It's good at this level. It's really helpful.
Stand.
When I was first studying, we were on electric wheels, right? And I didn't throw on a wheel like this until I did my apprenticeship. With our classes in our studio now, most of our teaching and my teaching with students is on the electric wheel, even though I demo on my kick wheel, but it's not like full on using that the same way. This is a Korean style kick wheel. The style wheel came over from Korea and into Japan, where Richard, my mentor, studied. But it was much larger version too for ongi, large storage containers. And when it came over, the wheel was more adapted to tea ceremony and teaware and small dishes. For sharing food. So when I first was learning this wheel, I mean, it was very different than electric wheel, and I feel the work made on this type of wheel versus electric is just a different type of work sometimes. Right off the hump is something that I enjoy throwing this week. I'm throwing clay from North Dakota right now. It's like the last little bit of it before we have to get some more.
Have any of you seen gauge or like this?
Just making it.
First for me.
So these tools that I have here, they're my Hera tools. There's a Unomi Hera or Bera. And what you're seeing here, this is a Chawan or T-bowl shaped, bowl-shaped era. But traditionally, right, they were used to compress the clay because the clay was short and shape the clay because you didn't have a lot of time to work with it because the water would crack it, it would fall and all this. So it's a compression tool and a shaping tool all in all in one. So these are made out of ironwood. I made these when I was kind of saying off of Richard's originals that he had from Japan that he made. We use ironwood because the wood is like rot resistant and it's super dense and it resists, it's strong. And we try to put, well, this one isn't as good, but the center of the tree in the bottom of the spoon, because when you're pushing down, then it's a strong part of the tree. And they always stay wet in this bucket. Otherwise, if they dry out, they'll check. So, using this tool and throwing on these wheels, it's definitely a dance. And as you can see, clay slip and tools falling out of your hand, or slipping on your hand and hitting the floor. This one I broke my me hair out, so I have to make a new one.
How long ago did you make those?
Most of these were made like in 2006. And then I had a short one too. It's an Osala Vera. There it is. So this is more for like large plates, flat, open dishes, things like that. But you can see there was a knot in the spoon, which was fine for a while, but over the years it opened up. So now I got to kind of trim it back, sand it back. I used a gouge, I used a belt sander, I used a chisel. The original blanks were made by a woodworker. He's no longer with us now, but Francis Schillinger is where I milled a bunch of the wood. His son Chris runs Avon Hill Smoke School. His brother John is a boat builder who made my bench and makes my wheels, who had done that. So Francis made these blanks for us originally, and they're just J-shaped pieces off a bandsaw, you know, a scroll saw, you could do that. And they're dry, and then you shape them with basic tools or power tools, whatever you want. So, for instance, this one, the big issue with throwing off pump is having enough compression on the floor, the bottom of your piece, that it doesn't S-crack or compression crack because you're not throwing out the wheel head. And by using the me hair up and compressing the bottom, helps with that issue. Or not, helps with that sort of. So this is North Dakota clay, like I was saying. I screened it down enough through like an EMS screen in a slurry, and then let it dry in a bed sheet outside, and then I wedged it up on the concrete floor in our home studio.
What's that screen?
It's like 80 mesh, I think.
More complicated.
So these I'll put back in here. I'll use these to drill with. If there are any questions, feel free to ask along the way. try to,
Judy said there's still no volume.
shoot the bottom button on the, there's like a volume thing right at the base. You'll see it, it's like a little microphone.
Oh, she says got it now. All right, I think we're good.
What's that slip name? Color in the slip.
The clay from Kimball, a little bit that I've used in the clays over the years, similar to Graham Ray to me, is high iron. It's not all nylon clay. Also high iron. They're very different when you fire it in the wood kiln, but that high iron clay is definitely not a throwing body that I use, but it's more switch the plays in Broadway and things like that. Don't do yoga or anything like that, but when I was in college, I was a rower, and in rowing, there's definitely rest periods and exerting force and energy periods. Using a kick wheel like this, I related to rowing because like, okay, well, my right leg is definitely putting the power in and centering and pulling the clay up, and then planting your feet and resting when you can. That's something that's yeah, that's definitely into that. Yeah, trying to stabilize your lower body and upper body independent of one another.
Yeah, kicking and doing. thumbnail.
That's the level.
That's like,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. I do that.
Walking and chewing gum. That's not my thing either.
Odd.
So something that I did during my apprenticeship, and then something I still work on teaching when people are working this way, is we progress through forms. So we made hundreds of these little doorknob shapes before we did anything else. And then after those doorknob shapes, then we changed into little dishes and little larger dishes and bowls. Then we went out or up. Up is, we as in up is bottles and up are sugar containers or tea caddies at that time when I was studying. And out is like pasta dishes or stew dishes and donbori bowls, fish bowls, and things like that.
did you do both eventually, or you had to pick, you wanted to go up, or you wanted to go out?
Kind of picked, and then towards the end of that time, I started some other.
So did you go up?
I went out.
You went out.
So, and I really didn't realize until this. I have a lot of thoughts on my apprenticeship, and I've been unpacking that time ever since I was there. But really, I didn't realize how much the clay has been my voice in my work since that point. I've kind of let go of some of the surface design, decoration, and painting. I do a little bit of that, but especially in the wood kiln, to me, my voice has been my clay that I've been using and how it interacts with the kilns. And I didn't realize how much using something every day made something more precious than any price you could put on it. If that's nostalgia, or if that's something that's just intangible that draws you to something else. Using pots every day when I was apprenticing and having tea every day, and sharing food and all that. Something that Megan and I do now and are working towards more is like having people use things they make and getting people excited about making and using things. And then, I use the same piece for days or weeks sometimes, and it just, the work doesn't have to be complicated. It just needs to be thoughtful. And I feel working this way, or working on our work in a way that, to me, I try to make thoughtful work. It doesn't always happen. I strive for that every time I sit down. But using work every day, having tea, sharing food, and especially with the clay that we were using and the clay that I've been using now that are from places that are very important to me. I'm very thankful, much gratitude to something that I don't own, something that I come upon something that there's a limited supply of, and I've been appreciative of it ever since I started using it. I feel like it's grown even more with the years. At some point, it's going to be gone and gone forever because we're not getting off this planet alive. At least not that we know. So. Something I was going to try to have some work ready to go, to be in progress, to trim and decorate, but to be honest with you, that didn't happen. And so what you won't see, really, is the fact that I also have a number of chucks that I've made. And they're ceramic chuck, there's a leather hard clay head that these pieces won't fit on this because I need my cup chuck. But bowls and other things I flip upside down and I trim on, and then once they've been trimmed, then I flip them back over and I do brushwork or any number of other things on them. But this stays damp as well. This clay head stays pretty leather hard, and if I need to, I can level it or change the shape of it for different things.
I've seen that a couple times before, but how long can you like feasibly keep that leather hard?
Well, as on the freeze,
Really?
I mean, dry out, you just have to redo the head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you work that? I mean, how do you
very common.
It's just very tough.
Oh, so this is an example of one without the head. I mean, I can use it, just put a little clay coil on top if I wanted to. And for a teapot, if I'm working on a teapot, then I'll like maybe just set this on my cake wheel without the clay, and then I'll set a teapot in there and arrange where the spout's gonna go or whatever, right? But the one that has the clay head, I would center on the wheel, and then I put a clay ring around the base after it's centered. And I put pieces that are leather hard ready to trim upside down. And that helps with compression too, because you'll be able to push down and trim that clay. And it's not a cavity at that point, pushing against the clay head. And that helps with stamping the bottom if you have a stamp of your own, or trimming. Chair.
That's your chair.
What's that?
That's your chair, I think. Do you just put a dollop of soap in there?
Well, usually, it's definitely, it is a dance, right? That didn't work so well, but usually you take the slip off your hands to your right hand, clean off the tool, the hair up, scrape the slip, drag it down the wall with a spoon. So
You're trying to get it along the tool, not the
fall.
agitator.
Yeah. And then you're compressing the bottom here and shaping.
It's like, looks like a casual movement, but it's actually all like doing it in the right order matters.
Yeah. And the other part of this is here, I think I failed to do that. Especially here, you relax your hand, and bring it over and you can press it. Bring it that way too.
Do you use those tools when you put on the wheel? Or I mean on the electric wheel?
Well, you can, I have.
Do you usually do it or?
I don't do it as much. I demo for like my regular classes, but I don't solely use these tools.
No.
Just because most people don't have these tools.
Right.
So it's hard to demo something that people don't have access to use all the time, other than teaching workshops where I'm making before.
But if you're throwing your own work on the electric wheel, you use those.
This, or I love my metal rig too. So that's part of like finding my own voice in my work. I love these tools, I use them all the time, but on the other hand, there's other tools I like too, that I use and incorporate.
Very nice.
Defying the laws of gravity.
Yeah, right. That thing was floating.
Stay there, Bull. We got you. This clay I'm playing with is pretty stiff. A little stiffer than I would want. It's really off the hump. Usually a little softer clay is better.
It does what you tell it to, though.
What's that?
It does what you tell it to.
It is a back and forth quite a bit.
It's more of an argument instead of a conversation.
How about I do this instead? How about you push a little harder?
All right.
Over there. Outside.
This summer, I'm working on some coil pieces that I haven't made for a while, and these wheels are great for making coil and pallet pieces.
When you do that, you have to switch directions.
What's that?
Is that right? You gotta change the direction of the spin, is that right?
No, not for coiling, paddling. It's more, it's like a large, these wheels are, you know, like 42 pounds, so like a large banding wheel too. So putting your clay base down and coiling, you know, so, and then you build it up, and then you can let pieces dry, come back to it, you know, things like that. This clay fires white at cone 6. Straight out of the ground. In North Dakota, where I grew up, there's a lot of coal mining, strip mining, you know, and along that coal bed, there's fire clay naturally occurring. That's just part of what the coal seam does, supposedly, is that's available in that geological formation for some reason. And there's a lot of other type of materials. But the clay that I'm using is the same clay member that's about 100 miles long in geological formation that the oldest brick company in North Dakota uses to make facing brick for houses. And they fire cone 6 gas tunnel kiln. So it's pretty interesting to see what stays the same and what's different with a different approach of making and firing, what the function of something is.
Facing brick means brick that can get hot, or brick that is meant to.
Meant for like facing the exterior of buildings and homes.
Decorative.
Yep, decorative work.
When you first started learning on that hip wheel, was it fun or was it like really frustrating? Did you like try to do something you could do on the electric wheel, but like starting something over again that you've already learned?
It was like starting the blade over, but it was very frustrating. I mean, the first thing I was supposed to make the first week I was in the students was a water jar to throw, like a throwing jar. No specific. That's the other thing. Like we didn't have like. Just make me sound old. We didn't have social media to watch 1,000 people do 1,000 different things. So Richard's like, make a throwing jar. Like, okay. No electric wheels in the studio. It was like, didn't show us how to do it. So we had to figure out what we were going to do. Well, I decided I was just going to throw mine on the kick wheel. Well, the first time I sat down on this wheel, I like put, okay, how much clay are we supposed to use? Well, Richard and we ended up throwing about 25 pounds every time we sat down. So we wedged 25 pounds of clay, and then that's what we throw. I was like we do like 6, 7 of those in a day. Easy once you got into it, but that first time, you're like, okay, well, this is what they're wedging. The 3 of us that started together, and then it's like put our hands on the clay and then kicked, and then like the wheel didn't turn at all. Like it's like a dead stop. Fast forward a week. Fast forward 2 weeks. and then we like, it's just like very like physical on your body too, and like very not bilateral as far as your muscle groups go. Man, it was something. It was very frustrating, and really set things home. Like, okay, this is not that we are, there's a certain amount of confidence in the skills a person has until you let go of all the tools that you're used to, because that's what we did. We didn't have the tools we usually use. We didn't go there to make our work that we were making before the apprenticeship. We were there to learn something that we did not know how to do. Zero the slate and start over with all this knowledge that we may have had. Well, it doesn't apply there because you're learning something else now. And that was the hard thing. Really not your confidence within those things that you knew anyway, because like, okay, well, here we are. And you start over. And that's what we had to do. We started over. And that's, digging in with what we're doing in my talk on brick making. That's what we were doing. We were starting over with tools we didn't know. Megan and I have done many different things in our professional and adult careers in clay, and there's been so many start overs, continuous fails and start overs to get to where that hole is now, maybe, or whatever. And that's really something hard to take when you have some confidence in what you're doing, and then you're told you can't do that. So it was really something. And I didn't have a lot of, history. I didn't have a lot of expertise then. I didn't have a lot of knowledge. I went there because I wanted to learn, and that was really important. All right, here we go.
So how did you make these for the water jar?
I did. Yeah, I had it for a long time until it broke. It fell off my water. But that's the thing. It's like there's so many failures that go into something that's finished that no one sees, and everybody's like, "Well, I'm going to do that," and then not realize how much actual effort and time it takes. I'm the same way with things like, "Wow, that looks really easy to do," or whatever. It's just really fascinating watching people do things, making bricks and painting, any number of things. It is very humbling, the whole thing, and over the years, it has come back in different ways, finding my voice in my work, how that's changed, what is my voice, what's not someone else's voice. That's complicated. And it's not straight line. It's so windy, the road. It really is. So I feel there's something to be said about letting go of what you have to start again new with something that you don't know, and be okay with being on the path of uncertainty to figure out what is happening and why it's important to you. why it's important to us as humans. Why are we doing the things? Is it a mindless thing that we're doing only to go through our daily life, or is it something that's reflective, it's inward, it's a meditation, it's something bigger than us? Most of the things that I learned from my apprenticeship and my time that I talk about it all the time, and it's because it's something that's bigger than all of us, that when we were there, that we were part of, that we could be like invested in. And having a little bit of a rite of passage from something the person worked so hard on to see the fulfillment of what you've done, and look back. We need more of that in our lives, I feel.
Amen.
And I gotta be honest, you know, being around this area and apprenticing at St. John's, I'm not the only one that studied there. There's a lot of other apprentices over in this area that have had that experience and have different approaches to what they do and why they do it. It's not all the same, and that nuance is really makes that experience really pretty neat.
An apprenticeship, that's a multi-year process. Right?
Well, I mean, that depends on the person.
One person. And then,
Some of it was 3 months.
and there's like multiple at a time going on, right?
Well, I don't know these days. I know there are people working there, and it may be different, maybe the same, but my experience, I think there's a couple people. I mean, that's our approach. Like, we're not having the same sort of apprenticeship option here in our student, but it's definitely something that's immersive.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to do the math on just how many people have come out of there and how many different bodies are out of there.
Yeah, there. I forget how many apprentices I've come through Richard's studio.
So it's,
Like stated, or unstated, you know, there's been a lot of people since the 70s, 75
yeah.
came back, I think. I mean, that time, and then the time, you know, in school, formative, like college, and that's informed me in different ways, and like in high school, not having a lot of direction from my instructors, that has informed me differently too. It's all been like independent, but you know, all the circles overlap, and there's the slivers of information that are super like intense and important. That's what all that is to me.
What do you need?
Get a comb. Red.
I'll grab one.
Thank you.
So you're just considering formal design when you decorate? You just making decisions and gestures.
Yeah, I tried, I try to be as gestural as I can in the moment with the thing. and just do it and try not to think about it a lot. That comes back and bites me a little bit too, but I try to do that. Slip casting is not that way. Any questions? Any more questions? So far?
And seeing about, I've never thrown out the hump before, but all your feet seem to be approximately about the same diameter.
Okay.
Is there like a maximum limit to what's practical for
Well, I mean, that depends. I mean, you can decide. I also throw plates off the hump. Maybe I'll throw one down too. So you can have a really small column of clay to make these or other things or small dishes.
Mhm.
And then it could be wider like this. Sometimes it depends on, well, some is on my hand size, but other times it's what you're making. So you can change that. There's not a set rule. Obviously, this style of foot is more, it's a pedestal foot, it's a Japanese, I think, kind of Chinese influence of holding things and saying things to people. When you use pieces like that with a smaller foot, it makes things a lot of times look more elegant and just sitting there with the shadow. You do have to be sometimes careful in how you use them and eat with them, because that's the difference in our, I think, approach with utensils. A lot of times, chopsticks being used, and you're not using a fork to push on the side of a bowl or plate where it's intended to be held in your hand and eaten with chopsticks or something else like that. So that's a nuance within a smaller foot like that I had to learn. Using these pieces, and besides like that type of influence in work, it's like the unglazed ceramic sort of approach. A lot of the work I made is all like mid-range fired with the clay and buried in charcoal and wood kiln, a traditional way in Japan, China, Korea area. Tanegashima Island, south of Japan, actually is where it kind of originated, I guess, because they're making wood tiles. But all that being said, it's like the idea of not being able to eat and drink out of unglazed ceramics is pretty. You shouldn't do that, right? But if it's fired correctly, and people have done it thousands of years, also using feet of different sizes, and utility of utensils and how they work. So there's no set way, no reason for the width of the column clay. Coming back around, I don't know if that's helpful or not.
It would be practical.
You just like getting more like that's better. It's like every time you touch it, it's just
It's good for your skin.
that's right.
All right, this will be the last piece. So learning this way, we made like small dishes off the hump. We learned doing but I made this kind of crossover between a plate and a bowl, call them plates. Those are not completely flat, they're off the hump. So in that sense, I use mine. Sometimes like a metal rib like this, too.
Trying to see if there are any comments. Can you throw without shoes? You throw barefoot?
Yeah. I usually throw without shoes on heels. So obviously it's something working this way too. A lot of this decoration I would do in the leather art stage, like I would trim everything. So I would do something similar then. So when I flip this upside down, sometimes it's fine where I can trim this and it doesn't mar that surface with those the leather art clay head. But a lot of times this sort of information, some of it's done in that leather art stage. So it doesn't muscle. Cut you again.
Show it to the camera.
All right, there it is. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thanks for watching, everyone. Oh, you. I don't know how to stop this.
Touch bin.
Oh.